liberal media outlets, right-wing pundits, social justice activists, Maoist YouTubers, many agree Joker says a lot about our society. But what exactly it says varies wildly depending on who you ask. If you ask me, it's a critique of the liberal capitalist establishment and a call for communist revolution. No, I don't think anti-SJW edgelord Todd Phillips is a far-left sleeper agent, but the author has been dead since 1967, so I'd rather let the film speak for itself. Our protagonist, Arthur Fleck, is a cis white male, yes, and that does play a part in the narrative. However, that does not preclude him from also belonging to minority groups. A truly intersectional look at Arthur quickly reveals that Joker is largely about a disabled, poor proletarian. It is only considering his identity as a whole that the film can be coherently interpreted. Unwoke elements of Joker are not there to be glorified, but to show Arthur's and other characters' inability to see that they are oppressed by the same system, and to develop class consciousness, the awareness by a social or economic class of their position and interest within the structure of the economic and social order in which they live. And this inability is importantly presented not as a moral flaw, but as a result of capitalism being materially structured in a way that discourages solidarity. The film starts with Arthur being robbed by poor kids of color in Gotham, analogous to 1980s New York. Arthur resents this as a personal attack, but the audience can tell the economic motive behind it. The racist trope of people of color assaulting whites is invoked, but its usual message is subverted. We should empathize both with poor disabled white men and with poor teens of color taking it out on passers-by. That is the first of several moments where Arthur's struggles are apparently provoked by other members of the working class, but it's always either implicit or explicit that it's actually capitalism pitching them against each other. A black woman chastises Arthur on the bus because, especially in an impoverished area, she can't trust white men. Arthur's social services therapist is dismissive because she's underpaid, undertrained, and overworked. Arthur's boss fires him because he can't take any chances amidst Gotham's economic instability. Arthur's co-worker reports Arthur's gun to their boss, but hides that it was he who gave him the gun in fear of getting fired himself. The clerk at Arkham State Hospital makes an effort to help Arthur, but he can't break the rules, which might be the hospital's rules or Thomas Wayne's rules. The overarching motif is not that people of color are bad, it's that capitalism and its byproducts, racism, ableism, create tensions within the proletariat. Arthur fails to fight this. He misses the clues that his problems are systemic and knows himself only as the isolated individual his marginalization made him. The social worker says the powerful don't care about people like Arthur, disabled workers, or people like her, black female workers. Before the men on the underground turn on Arthur, they harass a woman, but Arthur doesn't realize the link between ableism, racism, sexism, and capitalism. In the best case that he doesn't murder his neighbor Sophie, figuring their relationship was all in his head so he can't blame her for rejecting him, he still never questions his fantasy of stalking her. He blames and unambiguously does murder his mentally ill mother Penny for being a victim of both Thomas Wayne and her ex-boyfriend. A huge mistake, since Penny's version is confirmed by the photograph of her with "Love Your Smile TW" written on the back. Even when it comes to other disabled, poor, white men, to Arthur, the personal is not political. Arthur's co-worker Randall makes ableist remarks about their other co-worker Gary, who has dwarfism, but Randall needs only exploit Arthur's fatherlessness, calling him "my boy," for Arthur to believe he's found an ally. Later, Randall betrays Arthur, and the very person who had given Arthur his gun, encouraging him to fight back, is murdered by him in revenge. Gary, on the other hand, is spared for treating Arthur well in the past. It doesn't occur to him that maybe Gary was nice because he empathized with Arthur's disability, and Arthur doesn't empathize with Gary's disability, as demonstrated when he lets Gary try and fail to reach for the door lock. That scene is not humorous, it's tense. It highlights the chaotic unpredictability of Arthur's actions. There is no grand narrative that could certify whether Gary would survive or not. But it does work as a test, which also highlights something else. Joker is not a freak of nature, he's something any of us could be led to become. If you laugh, you're siding with ableism even as you watch a film about the suffering of a mentally ill man. You too are failing to see that if you sympathize with one disabled individual, you should sympathize with all of them as a social class. Nevertheless, just as you are not an inherently garbage human, neither is Arthur. He's oblivious because white men are taught not to see racism and sexism, because the way he's treated for his illness, his poverty, and the distrust in his vulnerable community make it hard for him to connect with other people, and make it hard for him to meet real women, so all he knows are the pornographic pictures pasted in his journal. This is not to say his behavior is acceptable or should not be challenged. It is to identify the cause of his behavior, a vicious capitalist circle of hostility. If you need even more evidence that capitalism is the villain, Joker is packed with it. The first anti-rich protest happens at a Wayne charity event where capitalists innocently and jarringly watch Modern Times, a film about working-class alienation. Arthur writes that he hopes his death makes more sense than his life, implying money currently dictates the meaning of human existence. Our main antagonist is billionaire Thomas Wayne, who proclaims on TV that the poor of the city are clowns, envious that he made something out of his life while they didn't, and that anyone who wears a mask is a coward. The clown part resembles Hillary Clinton calling Trump supporters deplorables, but that's not all there is to Wayne. He is a white male capitalist turned politician. He would support Unmask Antifa. He coerced a woman into staying silent about his extramarital affair with her. He shows no compassion for disenfranchised people who turn to crime. If there is some Hillary in Wayne, there is a lot of Trump as well, including when he went on air in 1989 to call for hatred and the death penalty against misguided youth of color. And there is also a lot of Ronald Reagan, who was the president in the 80s, bears a physical resemblance to Wayne, and was known for his you're on your own anti-welfare ideology. Trying to pin down the one specific liberal politician Wayne represents is futile. They're all merged into the same figure, because this figure represents the bourgeoisie, whose class character is fundamentally the same, no matter if it's painted red or blue. Another antagonistic force is the neoliberal austerity that leaves Arthur with no access to medication, which mirrors Reagan's repeal of the Mental Health Systems Act. Before, Arthur was on 7 different pills and asked his therapist for more since his current dosage wasn't enough to make him feel well and happy, which references Big Pharma trying to maximize its profits while ignoring how the inhumane capitalist environment might contribute to bad mental health. This violent system makes Arthur feel invisible, non-existent, until he discovers that perpetrating some violence of his own can get him noticed. His first killings are almost accidental, instinctive rage against 3 young ableist capitalists who attack him on the tube. The audience can understand what led to this reaction, but especially the drawn-out execution of the third man makes us uncomfortably aware that this is not a desirable outcome. To Arthur, nonetheless, it's a power high, the first time he's ever had the upper hand. The next day, the incident is all over the news, along with clown-themed protests inspired by Wayne's comments. Arthur is seen by many as a champion of the working class killing the rich, but to Arthur, all that matters is being seen. He is fulfilling his Fred Astaire dream of shining in a solo dancing number, never mind the black proletarians singing about politics. That's the musical he's watching when he first fires his gun. The pattern repeats when Arthur goes on the show hosted by his idol, Murray Franklin. The first thing he does is forcibly kiss a female guest, then he confesses to the underground shootings, and Murray keeps him on stage, hoping to profit off the scandal. Arthur rants that the system, controlled by abled capitalists like Murray, decides what's right and what's funny, and while everyone is outraged at the deaths of the 3 businessmen, no one cares about Arthur's strife. Murray brushes it all off as self-pity, so Arthur resorts to the only thing he thinks can get him heard. He shoots Murray dead. Even then though, when Arthur turns to a camera and starts talking, the broadcast cuts him off mid-sentence. The media don't listen to him. They only use him as a money-making spectacle. In the real world, Murray doesn't treat him like a son. he mocks him for his own financial gain. Yet, in his speech, Arthur accurately describes how capitalism made him go wild, but he continues to frame matters in terms of individuals being awful to each other as opposed to civil, and in terms of a dispute between him and Thomas Wayne. Usually that's how Joker and Batman narratives are presented, but Joker goes completely against the premise of the superhero genre itself. The super rats plaguing Gotham are significant because of Murray's joke that the mayor intends to fight them with super cats. To Murray it might be offhand silliness, but it mocks the idea of a savior, be it Thomas Wayne, who claims he is the only hope for the sane people he called clowns, or Bruce Wayne, and it makes fun of palliative reforms. These themes are reinforced when Arthur is arrested and driven through the riots that broke out after his TV appearance. Throughout the film, as well as here, protesters can be observed with various types of signs. They range from, if you think greed is bad, wait until you hear about capitalism, pointing out the crux of the issue, to a job is a right, perfectly in line with the status quo, to resist, accidentally held upside down. Thus, the protesters have varying levels of radicalism, but ultimately their movement is one of liberal incompetence, further limited by the fact it attracts only men, given its ignorance of the connections between capitalism and patriarchy. Indeed, their slogan is "Kill the Rich," an idealistic principle that seeks to punish individuals without changing the system that created them. With this mentality, a rioter murders Thomas and Martha Wayne, destroying her pearl necklace and leaving the remnants abandoned in the alley. The wealth produced by the bourgeoisie is destroyed rather than repurposed, as Marx would have it. If the politics shown in Joker lead nowhere, it's because Arthur only ever engages in personally motivated reactionary violence, and the protests he inspires are equally individualistic and reactionary, a personality cult devoid of material analysis. When at one point Arthur imagines Sophie calling him a hero for the underground shooting, her own words betray the futility of the act. 3 less creeps in Gotham City, only 1 million more to go. Arthur gets a moment of glory among the clowns, but soon after he is taken back to the same hospital where he had been previously committed, in a hopeless loop. And until the very end, he remains isolated inside himself and his liberal mindset. The joke is between him and Thomas Wayne, or him and Bruce Wayne. His new black female therapist would not get it, so he kills her in another act of senseless brutality, and the final scene has him running away from the orderlies as Frank Sinatra's "That's Life" plays. The lyrics echo the story of Arthur and by extension the story of Gotham. They can never tackle the ills of capitalism by their roots, so they're always running away from its effects, or they're always going back to the rat race. Their lack of class consciousness keeps them stuck in the capitalist realism of believing that's life. The film is not above criticism. It would certainly have been nice if the black female characters had more agency. It would certainly have been nice if Arthur's role had given opportunity to a disabled actor, etc., but it still offers poignant insight. Joker is the gruesome tragedy of what a capitalist society can do to a mentally ill loner, both in terms of driving him to snap and in terms of ensuring such horrors continue to reproduce themselves. We're left, therefore, with a rather bleak outlook, but also with the certainty that as difficult as it may be to break this cycle, if there is anything that can do it, it is only communism, the real movement which abolishes the present state of things.